Have you ever been in that first date situation where there's the real struggle and then it happens, that silence hits, that awkward silence where you're both kind of like, what's next? What are we going to say? Do I check my phone? Do I look around the room? What do I do? Because it's just awkward. Well, it doesn't have to be. What you can do is go into that situation with some specific tips. And what they'll do is they'll keep you from having those awkward silences on a first date. Do you want to know what they are? We're going to share them with you today. Hey guys, I'm David Maxwell with Thriving Man, where we help you conquer your everyday chaos and live a thriving life. And we're going to talk today about awkward silences on that first date. When you're just getting to know someone, it can be awkward. And you can have those times where you're not sure what to say. You're not sure what to do. And the point of the first date is to get to know each other. If you're not talking, that's a problem. And it most likely means you're not going to have a second date. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you some tips today that will help you kind of move past that awkward silence. We're going to give you some things that will strengthen you and get you ready to go into that date with confidence. I'm not saying the date's going to be perfect. She might be weird. You might be weird. But you know what? It's going to be a lot funner when you go in prepared and ready for it. I guarantee you'll have a much better experience. So let's jump in. Okay, tip number one is plan to be the initiator of the conversation. What does that mean? That means that when you go into the date, you're planning the conversations. I'm not saying you want to monopolize it. You don't want to be the guy who talks all the time. You don't want to sit there and talk about yourself and brag on yourself. A lot of guys, when they get insecure or a little nervous, that's what they do. They just kind of blab. Don't do that. Go in with a plan to initiate conversation. What that means is you're asking the questions. You're prepared. You're going in ready. It's not an interview. So what you want to do is go in with some questions. You're not going in to grill. You're going in just to get to know, but someone's got to be the initiator of the conversation. And I want you to be the leader. You're the man. So lead in that way. Go in prepared to bring up conversations, to have conversations ready to go, because that shows a lot of things. One, it shows your ability to think, and two, it shows how much interest you have in her, and that's a big part. So plan to initiate the conversation and be the leader of that date. Tip number two is to ask open-ended questions. You don't want to ask questions that are just a yes or a no. So what you want to do is think about your question in a way that gets her to talk. So you don't say, hey, do you like to travel? Okay, that's not much of a question, because she'll just say yeah or no. You can say, what's some of the favorite places you've been? Or give me your top 2 places you've ever been in your life. What's your favorite travel moment? Where did you go in the world that just took your breath away? Questions like that get her talking. It gets her thinking about what she's done. And it could be a question that she has to think about. So don't be scared of a little bit of silence in the conversation, especially if she's thinking. If you ask a good question that's open-ended, you may get her thinking. And you know what that does? That tells her that you're someone who thinks. And she's going to be impressed with that if she's a quality woman. So you want to have those open-ended questions ready. I tell guys to think of it like a treasure hunt. You want to find out the things that she's into. You want to find out what things she enjoys. So plan to dig, but you do it, number one, with some open-ended questions. Tip number 3 is to answer a question fully and then rebound with another question. And what that means is what you want to do is you want to answer a question fully. Make sure you answer her question, but then from that, try to have a question ready for her. Like if she says, what do you do on the weekends to relax? What do you do that you think is fun? You say, well, this past weekend I went hiking. I loved it. We got to hike over these mountains, or we went out on this trail in the woods. And you tell her about that. And then you do this. You say, tell me what you do to unwind. Tell me some of your favorite hobbies that you really get into. Or what's the best thing you did last weekend? Those are questions you can rebound with based off the topic that you answered. And what that does is that gets the game going back and forth. And that's the way you get a conversation going. And that's how you get to know each other. Tip number 4 is have some questions ready. Go in prepared. You say, well, David, does that mean I have a list on my phone? Why not? Why not tell her, said, hey, I thought it'd be fun if we had some specific questions to answer on the date so we can get to know each other. Because what that explains to her is that I put forethought into this date. I cared enough about this date to prepare ahead of time. Now make sure the questions are interesting and about her, because that way you can dig in and get to know her better. And again, if you're rebounding the questions and doing things like that, you're ready for it. Now, you don't want questions that are obviously AI questions or obviously done in such a way that you're trying to get her to think about something specific. You want to just have a list of questions to say, I just want to get to know you. I want to find out more about you. It shows her you're ready for the date. It shows you prepared for the date. And it's you being a leader in that relationship. And that's a good sign. Tip number 5 is to let her teach you something she's into. Find out something that she's into and then say, hey, tell me about that. What does that mean? What does that look like? It's the same thing for you. If you're really into something and someone asks you about it, let's say you're into old cars and they say, hey, tell me why you prefer the 1969 Chevy. You can explain that. You can talk about it. Find out what she's into. Maybe it's painting. And say, hey, if I was to learn to paint, what would you suggest I do first? See, that's a question that helps her teach you. And what it is it's a way of showing that you're interested in what she's into. And if she's into something, you ask about it, she's going to tell you about it. And you know what? She's going to enjoy the date a whole lot more because she's talking about something that relaxes her and is natural to her. And that's where you want her to be. Tip number 6 is to be yourself, but don't be a jerk. And you think, well, how do I do that? Well, what I'm talking about here is maybe you and her don't see something eye to eye. Maybe you've got a disagreement. Maybe she's a dog person. She loves dogs. Maybe you're a cat person or vice versa. Well, you don't want to go into it saying, oh, all dog people are stupid. Well, it's not going to be a great first date if that's what she's into. And what I mean is you want to be genuine. You say, hey, I'm just not a dog fan. I grew up with cats. I'm more of a cat fan. Or vice versa. She may be a cat person. You're a dog person. That's fine. You can have a disagreement about something, but you don't want to be disagreeable about it. You don't want to be, oh, well, you're an idiot. Even if what she says is a deal breaker. Maybe you're a Buffalo Bills fan and you're like, it's all about the Bills. And maybe she's a New England Patriots fan and she's passionate about the Patriots. Well, that may be a deal breaker for you. You may be like, hey, we're not going to last long in this, but you can still have an enjoyable date. You can still have fun and you can talk football the whole time. I don't know what it is, but you want to be genuine. Don't lie. Don't say you like something that you don't, but you don't have to get all bent out of shape about it. If y'all disagree, you disagree. You move on and talk about something else you can agree on. Don't be a jerk and try to prove your point right. That's not the point of a first date. It's just to get to know each other. And if y'all are different, hey, that's what the first date was for. You figured out we're not going to have a second date, or you'll figure out I want a second date, and that's a good thing. Okay, tip number 7, the last tip, is get some ideas from her feed. And I put in this sparingly, mainly because you don't want to stalk. You don't want to, look at her feed to where you're sitting there going, yeah, I saw last Friday what you were doing. Okay, that's creepy and weird. You don't want to be creepy and weird, but you want to get on there to find out some things about her because that may give you ideas for questions. You may see her hiking somewhere. You may see her taking pictures from the tops of mountains and things like that. Well, guess what? You can ask her about hiking, what she does for fun. Does she like the outdoors? You can get ideas from that from her feed, but don't make the question so specific that, hey, I noticed last Wednesday you were really tired and you got takeout. How was that Chinese meal? Okay, that means you've been stalking her and she's going to back off, and she should. But what you want to do is look at her feed, figure out some of the things she's into. Maybe she's a vinyl person. She loves vinyl. Well, then you can talk about music. Say, hey, tell me some of your top artists that you love to listen to. What's your favorite way to listen to music? And then you get her talking about vinyl and you're in. Those are ideas you can get from her feed. Just don't stalk her because stalking's wrong and it's weird. Okay, those are some tips to help you avoid the awkward silence. And just a final thought. Remember, the first date is not about perfection. It's about curiosity and confidence. You just want to go in curious. It's a first date. You're not getting married. You're just getting to know her. So just be curious. Find out about her. Get to know her. Don't grill her, but get to know her. Show her that, hey, I'm interested in you. That's why you went on the date. So when you show that and you're confident in your ability to ask questions, to give answers, those are all things that help you maybe have a second date. Maybe figure out whether she's the type that you really want to get to know or the type that, hey, we had fun, but I don't want to go on a second date. That's natural and that's normal, and that's a part of dating. So if you get a chance, let me know in the comments some of your favorite first date things that went well. Maybe it's a first date activity you did that went really well. Or maybe it was a disaster, something you thought would be good and it bombed. I'd love to hear some of those comments below. While you're at it, go ahead and subscribe because we want to help you get more material to help you thrive as a man. And we also have lots of stuff on our website, thrivingman.com. Check it out. It's what we do to help you be a better man every day in your life. We'll see you next time.